While we might think the number of Pokemon types are all set and have enough of their own interactions, battles go a lot deeper than just typings. Each Pokemon move has several additional identifiers that help it to work within a battle. One of the most famous of these would be sound. Now, this is also a popular idea for a brand new fan-made typing, but one of the reasons I personally am so opposed to sound type is that it's already comfortably a separate mechanic to typing, that being one of those secondary identifiers. So while Pokemon themselves cannot be sound types, the moves can be to a degree. It's just with all the moves that we have that continue to build themselves, why stop at just sound type, and what's to say there shouldn't be a punching type, a biting type, a bomb type? So for now, I wanted to go over some of those secondary typings that Pokemon moves have. There are a lot, but mostly I want to focus on the ones that have abilities and items that either boost their power or give immunity. So we're already pretty familiar with sound type. Abilities like Soundproof give immunity to them, and their power is boosted by the ability Punk Rock and the item Throat Spray. Again, I think the cool thing is that we can have all these moves that have a core typing and then also are sound based. This began in Generation 3, notably with the Whismur line. It was most supported recently in Generation 8 with all of their music-inspired Pokemon like Toxtricity. We also have punching moves, most notably being the Elemental Punches. Technically, these have been around since Generation 1 with Hitmonchan being the star of the show, but those Elemental Punches were really more like signature moves for Electabuzz, Magmar, and Jynx. Notice how they all have fists. It wasn't until Generation 4 that punching moves began to receive more support with the ability Iron Fist, which powers them up by 20%. Retroactively, Hitmonchan and Ledian were given this ability, but also the brand new Chimchar evolution line, which I honestly think is a cool idea, because while they're fighting types and can learn a bunch of fighting type moves, the fact that they're all monkeys means that they can have actual fists and would fit in with the animal that they're still based on. And then of course more Pokemon in the future would get this ability. Generation 9 recently added even more support with the held item Punching Glove, which boosts the power of punching moves by 10%. So we can get half of that Iron Fist boost on any Pokemon. That's actually a really fun idea, and I'm surprised it took this long to get an item like this. But fun fact, Sucker Punch does not count as a punching move because that's only the English name. Because Pokemon is Japanese, these move classifications will be dictated by its original language, and we'll see that a lot more with other moves. And probably the last of the most famous would be biting moves. Again, Bite has been around since Generation 1 where it was originally a normal type, but during Generation 4 with the Elemental Bite moves there would be a lot more support. They really came into the spotlight during Generation 6 where the ability Strongjaw was introduced for Tyrone and Tyrantrum. And I just love this because they're some of the coolest Pokemon and some of my personal favorites, a perfect way to debut this ability. Here's where things start to get a little less clear with Ball and Bomb moves. A bunch of moves that are just like, yeah, I guess those are all sort of the same thing. There isn't really an ability or item to increase their power, but there is the ability Bulletproof introduced in Generation 6 which gives immunity. While these moves have been around since the very beginning with stuff like Barrage, I think this was a cool idea to give a Pokemon like Chestnut a clear defensive advantage with the giant shell, and then later Komodo with all its scales. We also have Aura and Pulse moves, again another weird thing with how moves are named, because otherwise they're all Pulse moves except for Aura Sphere, which is different in Japanese and could have been translated as like Aura Pulse, but it wasn't. The funny thing is that the only Pokemon that get Mega Launcher, the ability that increases the power by 50%, are Mega Blastoise, Clauncher, and Clawitzer. So one evolution line and a Mega Pokemon that isn't even in every game. Again, I get it, these are some of the only Pokemon with actual cannons on them, but with these being the only Pokemon and there only being like 7 Pulse moves, it is a bit odd. And now we finally get to Generation 9 where we got 2 new type classifications, those being Slicing and Wind. Slicing moves are powered up by the new ability Sharpness. I think this is another classification that should have gotten support a lot earlier with how many there are and how many Pokemon are, you know, sharp and totally fit the sword and slicing idea, even though most Pokemon that have this ability are brand new. But you know, it's really funny that the actual sword Pokemon Aegislash can't get this ability because it needs to have stance change everywhere it goes. But yeah, it's also funny that now there are a lot of moves with the slicing identifier that cannot be learned by Pokemon with Sharpness, including Population Bomb, okay? Wind moves are another welcome addition for more support because I think they also deserved it. These interact with the abilities Wind Rider and Wind Power. Wind Rider gives immunity to wind moves and increases speed if hit by one, while Wind Power increases the strength of the next electric move used by a Pokemon that's been hit by a wind move. Yeah, a cool idea, and I think it works really well for the Pokemon these abilities were given to, those being Brambleghast, and I think Wind is another category that deserve the classification. While those are all the ones I would consider being the most important, we actually have a bunch more. Like if someone were to try and propose these as their own new typings, you know, punching, biting, slicing, and so on, then yeah, I guess I could get it, but the rest are just so solidified as secondary identifiers with their own mechanics that I almost don't even have all that much to say personally. For one thing, dancing moves are classified together because the ability Dancer can copy them. Draining moves interact with the ability Liquid Ooze, causing damage instead, and they're also supported by the item Big Root, which doesn't increase power but instead increases the health restored from it. We also have multi-hit moves, which have been around since the beginning as well. There isn't anything to increase their power directly, but rather the number of times they actually hit with the ability Skill Link and the item Loaded Dice. Drawing in moves have their effects ignored by the abilities Propeller Tail and Stalwart. Self-destructing moves are prevented by the ability Damp. Restorative moves are given priority by the ability Triage. Switching moves don't affect Pokemon with Suction Cups. Recoil moves power is increased by the ability Reckless, and the recoil damage is negated by Rockhead. So what I'm saying is that there are so many cool ways to give Pokemon moves more layers than just typings, because these don't even count things like whether they're physical or special moves or whether or not they make contact, because that one is also a whole other thing. I think it's a really fun idea to give these kinds of moves even more ways to interact with the Pokemon they're used on and used by. And honestly, this is my true reasoning for why I think there can never be a sound type. Sure, sound is the most supported out of any of these, but if we're going to propose that one, why not the rest? Like punching and biting are often used as the quick ones to suggest and sort of derail things, but they're actually kind of clear. I'm just saying that if we really go down this route, how are we supposed to add a recoil and multi-type move? Because there are even more of those than there are sound-based moves, I'm pretty sure. And I mean, it's also a fun idea to add more Pokemon types in fan-made projects, but I think battles in the main series Pokemon games are already potentially complex enough. But let me know what you think in the comments below. Which of these is your favorite, and do you hope they get even more things to interact with them in the future? Personally, sound always was and always will be my favorite, but I'm also a big fan of the slicing moves idea, and would love to see even more sword Pokemon. Anyway, I should get going because that was an awful lot of stuff to go over and think about. My brain is fried after looking at all those Pokemon moves. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, including the Great Gators, Locadox, Vossboss, The Keeper, Riley the Fake Dragon Lady, Adam M, Flockster J, Mobile Empire, Slimy Chris, Angel X, Panther Start, Michael Snyder, Koi 13, Cemetery Hill, Pastel Blood, Cosmo Zero, Rainfrux, Cheez-It 62, Alex Witch Shiny Hunter, Gator Kid 509, TF, Matha Clock 947, Tajirai, Justin R, Phantom, and Quago. If you would like to support, see your name here, get access to emotes for comments, live streams, and sometimes early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes, but anyway, this is GatorX, and I'll catch you all later.
Yo, let's go with a Pokeball yo-yo. Loop it, swing it, roll it, stroll it, throw it, catch it. Now you've really got control of that Pokeball. And hey, here's a cool thing, the new Battle Pokeballs. Roll the Pokeballs and battle it out with the auto score counter. Spin it to win it. Pokeball yo-yo and Battle Pokeballs, only from Bandai.